Chapter 16. I woke up the next morning groggy and sore, with the face full of stuffed bear. I groaned, turning over, my muscles aching. Why did I hurt so much? Had I bolted upright and flipped on my lightline bracelet, peering out of my cockpit bed. The light illuminated my little kitchen, a pile of mushrooms waiting to be sliced, some rocks I'd placed as seats there, and a car's power matrix, the size of a small nightstand. It lay where I'd dumped it after lugging it all the way to the cavern. I'd been so worn out after that, I hadn't plugged it in, but it climbed right into bed. I groaned and flopped back, rubbing my eyes with the heels of my palms. I'd been so angry last night. Well, I hadn't been thinking clearly. Stealing the power matrix seemed like a great idea, but now the holes in my clever plan were stark. Gee, I wonder who vandalized your car, Jerkface. Could it be the only one of us who wasn't at dinner and who had immediate and powerful reasons for wanting revenge on you? When it became known that I'd destroyed another cadet's property, I'd get tossed out of flight school so fast I'd get whiplash. I groaned again, a sound that was unhelpfully mimicked by Doomslug, who had snuggled into a spot on the dash. Why? Why couldn't I stay focused? Why did I have to let them get to me? Beowulf or Zhongguan wouldn't let themselves be goaded into acting this stupid. I felt sick as I trudged to Alta that morning. I didn't even have the will to try out the power matrix. As if there were anything I could do to prevent my doom at this point. Why couldn't Rational Spencer and Determined Spencer get together for a battle briefing once in a while? I fully expected the MPs to be waiting for me, but the guards at the gates just waved me through. Nobody stopped me on my way to the classroom. Jerkface came in while I was settling down in my seat, and he didn't so much as glance at me. Cobb limped in and started class like normal. At one point during a break, I managed to catch Jerkface's eyes. He met them and didn't look away. There was a challenge in them, yes, but how was I to read this? Was he waiting for some specific point to turn me in? As the day progressed and we practiced using the light lances on moving targets, I started to wonder if maybe he wasn't going to get me into trouble. Maybe he was taking the warrior's way. Rather than running to the Admiral for help, was he planning his own vengeance? If that was true, then, Scud, I might have to give that boy a little respect. Not much, mind you. He'd still aggressively and maliciously branded me a coward in front of the others. Arturo, Ned, FM, and even Ben trod more softly around me, peering at me out of the corners of their eyes. It didn't seem to affect our training, but during our breaks everyone was dancing around the news. They asked me about other things, then exited conversations quickly. The only one who didn't act odd was Kimmelin. That didn't mean she ignored what had happened, of course. So, she said, hovering beside my seat as I rested and drank from my canteen, is that why you're always so bellicose? Bellicose? I asked, unfamiliar with the word. So willing to seize the stars with one hand and shove them in your pocket? Kimmelin said. She leaned in as if the next part were somehow naughty. You know, heated. Heated. Maybe even, once in a while, cross? Is my father why I'm such a mess of anger, bravado, and temper? Is the fact that they call him a coward the reason I walk around with my sword in hand, screaming I'll make a pile of everyone's skulls and stand on that to help me behead the people who are too tall for me to reach? Kimmelin smiled fondly. Bless my stars? I asked her. Every single one of them, Spencer. Every single bouncing star. I sighed and took another drink. I don't know. I remember liking Gran stories even before he was shot down. But what happened certainly didn't help. When everyone looks at you as a coward's daughter, not a coward's daughter, but the singular coward's daughter, you develop an attitude. Well, bless you for standing up straight, she said, then put up her fist. Pride is a virtue in those who make it one. Said the saint, she was a very wise woman. You realize none of us have any idea which saint you're talking about? Kimmelin patted me on the head. It's okay, dear. You can't help being a heretic. The saint forgives you. From someone else that might have been offensive, particularly the head pat. From Kimmelin it was just, well, somehow comforting. By the end of the day, I was feeling a ton better. So much so, in fact, that I felt only mild nausea when they left me for dinner. So, that was good. Outside, I spotted Jerkface getting into a long, black hover car that had a driver wearing white gloves. Poor boy. Looked like he had to get a ride home now. I walked back to my cave with a spring in my step, chewing on some smoked rat. I would eventually have to pay some kind of vengeance bill to Jorgen, but I could do that. Bring it on. For now, I appear to have gotten away with a serious crime. One starfighter-sized power matrix, ready to go. I grinned as I arrived at my crevice, then lowered myself on my light line into the cavern. It was a silly thing to have risked my future over. The ship was so old. It wasn't like getting lights working was going to do any good. But it was also my secret, my discovery, my ship. Broken, worn out, with a bent wing, was still mine. I hauled the Matrix into position beside the ship's access hatch. The plugs were the same, so I didn't have to worry about hot wiring it. I glanced at Doomslug, who inched over along the wing toward me, then grinned and plugged it in. The light sprang to life on the diagnostic panel, and, judging by the glow from up front, on the dash inside the cockpit. The low humming tone from before started up again, then sped up, warping until it became words. Emergency boot-up procedure initiated, a masculine voice said from the cockpit. It spoke with a strange, old-timey accent, like I'd heard on the broadcast of famous speeches from the days before we'd founded Alta. Severe damage to structural integrity and databanks detected. Was it a recording? I scrambled over to the cockpit. Hello, the voice said to me, growing less mechanical. I assume from your clothing and attitude that you are a native of this locale. Would you kindly categorize yourself, stating your national affiliations and the names of your ancestors, so I might place you in my data tables? I scratched my head. What in the stars? Ah, the voice said. Excellent. Minimal linguistic deviation from Earth Standard English. Forgive the slowness of my processing, which doesn't quite seem up to normal benchmarks. But you are human, yes? Could you tell me, where am I? The words were lost on me. I simply knelt there, on the wing by the cockpit, trying to put together what was happening. My ship was talking to me. Chapter 17. My designation is MB-1021, Robotic Ship Integration, the ship said. It didn't just talk. It seemed to have trouble stopping. But humans prefer names to designations, so I am commonly referred to as MBOT, and I am a long-distance reconnaissance and recovery ship, designed for stealth operations and unsupported solo missions in deep space locations, and... The machine trailed off. And? I asked, lounging in the cockpit, trying to figure out what in the stars this thing was. And my databanks are corrupted, MBOT said. I cannot recover further information. I can't even retrieve my mission parameters. The only record I have is the most recent order from my master. Lie low, MBOT. Take stock. Don't get into any fights, and wait for me here. Your master was your pilot, right? I asked. Correct. Commander Spears. He summoned a fuzzy image for me, which briefly replaced the scanner display on his dash. This Commander Spears was a clean-cut, youngish man with a tan skin and crisp, unfamiliar uniform. I've never heard of him, I said, and I know all the famous pilots, even from Grand days in the fleet. What was up with the Krell when you came here? Had they attacked the galaxy yet? I have no recollection of this group, and the word Krell doesn't appear in my memory banks. He paused. Reading the decay rate of isotopes in my memory core indicates that it has been 172 years since I was deactivated. Huh, I said. The Defiant and its fleet crashed on Detritus about 80 years ago, and the Krell War started some distant time before that. Gran said the war had been going on a long time when she'd been born. Considering human lifespans, MBOT said, I must conclude that my pilot has perished. How sad. Sad? I asked, trying to wrap my mind around this. You have emotions? I am allowed self-improving and independently reinforcing memory pathways for the simulation of organic emotions. That allows me to have better interactions with humans, but I am not actually alive. My subroutines for emotional distress indicate I should feel loss for my master, but the memory banks recording his appearance, and our history together, are damaged. I remember nothing more than his name and his final command. Lie low, I repeated, take stock, and don't get into any fights. The only portion of my memory banks that seems to have survived intact, other than basic personality routines and things like general language usage, is an open database for recording fungoid life forms on this planet. I should very much like to fill the rest of it in. Fungoid? Mushrooms. Would you happen to have any I can categorize? You're a hyper-advanced stealth fighter that, somehow, has a machine person built into it, and you want me to bring you mushrooms? Yes, please. Mbot said, take stock, as in categorize like local life forms. I'm certain that's what he meant. I'm not so sure, I said. It sounded like you were supposed to hide from something. I leaned out the side, looking at his wings. You have large twin destructor emitters on each wings, along with a light lance turret underneath. That's as much firepower as our larger ships. You're a warship. Clearly not, Mbot said. I'm here to categorize fungi. Didn't you listen to my last orders? I am not supposed to get into fights. Then why do you have guns? For shooting large and dangerous beasts who might be threatening my fungus specimens, Mbot said. Obviously. That's stupid. I am a machine, and my conclusions are therefore logical, while yours are biased by organic irrationality. He made a few lights in his dash blink. That is a clever way of saying that you are the stupid one. In case you... I understand, I said. Thanks. You're welcome. He sounded utterly sincere, but he was, what, a robotic integration? Whatever that was. I wasn't sure how far I could trust his honesty. Still, he was a machine with a memory, albeit damaged, that stretched back hundreds of years. This could be a solution, maybe, to the questions we'd always asked. Why did the Krell keep attacking us? What were they really? Our only depictions of them were reconstructions based on the armor they wore, as we'd never been able to take one of them captive. We'd probably once known the answers to these questions, but if so, we'd lost them 80 years ago, soon after crashing here. And presuming themselves safe, the majority of the officers, scientists, and elders from our old fleet had gathered in an underground cavern. They'd recovered the old electronic archive from Defiant, and had been holding an emergency meeting. That was when the first Lifebuster had been dropped, destroying our archives, and with them, most anyone with seniority in the fleet. That was when the remnants of our people had broken into clans based on their duties in the fleet. Engine maintenance workers like Gran and her family, hydroponics crew, glorified farmers like Bim's ancestors, foot soldiers like Morning Tides. They'd learned, through difficult trial and error, that if they kept to small groups of under 100 people, the Krell sensors wouldn't find them hiding in the caves. Now, 3 generations later, here we were, slowly fighting our way back onto the surface, but with enormous holes in our memory and history. What if I could bring the ultimate secret to the DDF? The solution for defeating the Krell once and for all? Though, it was unlikely Mbot had that answer. After all, if the old human fleets had known how to defeat the Krell, they wouldn't have been driven to near extinction. But surely there were some secrets hidden inside this machine's mind. Can you fire your weapons? I asked. I'm commanded to avoid fights. Just answer, I said. Can you fire? No, Mbot said. The weapon systems are locked out of my control. Then why would your pilot order you not to get into any fights? You aren't capable of fighting anyone. Logically, one isn't required to be able to finish a fight in order to start one. I'm allowed minimal basic autonomous movement, and could theoretically stumble into a battle or a conflict. This would be disastrous for me on my own, as I require a pilot for most important functions. I can assist and diagnose, but as I am not alive, I cannot be trusted with destructive systems. So I could fire them, I said. Unfortunately, weapon systems are offline from damage. Great. What else is offline? Other than memories. Boosters, acclivity ring, cytonic hyperdrive, self-repair functions, the light lance, and all mobility functions. Also, my wing appears to be bent. Great. So, everything. My communications features and radar are functional, he noted, as are cockpit life support and short-range sensors. And that's it? That appears to be it. He was silent for a moment. I can't help noticing, through the aforementioned short-range sensors, that you are in possession of a few mushrooms. Might you be willing to place those in my cockpit analyzer for cataloging? I sighed, resting back in my seat. At your leisure, of course. I, being robotic, have no concept of fragile things like human impatient. So what do I do? But soon would be nice. I doubt I can fix things on my own, I thought. Should I just go to the DDF and tell them what I'd found? I'd have to reveal that I'd stolen the power matrix, and, of course, they'd never let me keep the ship for myself. Going to the DDF with it would essentially mean wrapping this vessel up with a bow, then presenting it to the very admiral who is trying her best to ruin my life. They do look like nice mushrooms. No, I was not going to give this discovery to Ironsides, at least not without more thought. But if I was going to try to repair the ship, I'd at least need help. Not that I require affirmation of any sort, as my emotions are merely simulations, but you are listening to me, right? I'm listening, I said. I'm just thinking. That is good. I should not like to be maintained by one who lacks brain functions. It was at that moment I had my third terrible idea in not so many days. I grinned. Maybe there was a way to get some help on the repairs. Somebody who had way more brain functions than I had. Approximately an hour and a half later, well after curfew, I was hanging upside down by my light line outside Riggs' window on the third floor of his apartment complex in Igneous. He was snug inside, sleeping in his bunk. He had his own little closet of a room, which I'd always found luxurious. His parents had been deemed exemplary in all 6 parental metrics, and had been granted housing for multiple children. But, ironically, Rig was the only one they ever ended up having. I knocked on his window, hair dangling below my head, as I hung there. Then I knocked again. Then a little louder. Come on. It hadn't been that long since I'd last done this. Finally, the sleepyhead sat up. Light through the window, from my light line, outlining his pale face and bleary eyes. He blinked at me, but didn't seem the least bit surprised as he walked over and slid the window open to the side. Hey, he said, took you long enough. Long enough? To try to talk me into coming back, which I'm not going to do. I don't have everything figured out, but I'm still sure that my decision to— Oh, shut up about that, I whispered. Grab your jumpsuit. I need to show you something. He raised an eyebrow. This is serious, I said. You're going to flip your boots when you see it. Infuriatingly, he just leaned on the windowsill, looking out at me as I was hanging there upside down, which was not easy, mind you. It's almost midnight, Spin. This will be worth it. You're going to drag me off to some cavern, aren't you? I won't be back until like 2 or 3, if you're lucky. He took a deep breath, then grabbed his jumpsuit. You do realize that you're the weirdest friend I've ever had. Oh, come on. Let's not pretend you have other friends. Strange, he said, that my parents never managed to give me a sibling, but I still somehow ended up with a sister who gets me into trouble all the time. I grinned. Meet you down below, I said, then I paused. Flip your boots, Rig. Trust me. Yeah. Give me a minute to sneak past my parents. He pulled the drapes closed, and I let myself down to the street below, where I waited impatiently. Igneous was a strange place at night. The apparatus worked all hours, of course. Day and night were just words here, though we still used the terms. There was a mandatory quiet cycle, during which the cavern loudspeakers didn't play any announcements or speeches, and a curfew for those who weren't on last shift. But nobody paid attention to you as you walked the streets if you kept to your own business. The default assumption in Igneous was that everyone was going about something useful. Rig met me down at street level as promised, and we walked to the cavern, passing the mural of 1,000 birds in flight, each one divided in half by a line, the 2 halves slightly offset from each other. The birds soared from a red-orange sun, which you couldn't even see up above. Our cadet pins got us past the guards and into the tunnels. As we walked one of the easier paths, Rig filled me in on what he'd been doing the last few weeks. His parents were happy he'd washed out. Everyone knew how dangerous being a pilot was. They're proud, of course, Rig said, grunting as he climbed some rubble with me. Everyone treats me really strangely once they see the pin. Like, they listen to what I say and tell me my ideas are good, even if they aren't. And people make way for me, like I'm someone important. You are? No, I'm the exact same amount of important I was before. He shook his head. But I've gotten a dozen different job offers waiting for me, and I've got 2 months to decide. 2 months? I repeated. Without a job or school, just free time? Yeah, Mrs. Meir keeps trying to push me towards politics. Politics? I said, almost stopping in the tunnel. You. Tell me about it. He sighed and sat down on a nearby rock. But what if she's right? Shouldn't I listen to her? Everyone else thinks politics is the best thing you can do with your life. Maybe I should do what they say. What do you want, though? Now you care about that? He asked. I winced, and Rig looked away, blushing deeply. Sorry, Spin. That wasn't fair. I haven't been fair. To you, I mean. I chose to study for the pilot's test. You didn't make me. And yes, your dreams kind of consumed my own, but that's mostly because I didn't have any dreams. Not really. He slumped on his rock, back to the wall, looking up at the tunnel ceiling. I keep thinking, what if it happens again? What if I let myself get excited about a job, then discover I'm completely unsuited to it? I failed at flying, right? So maybe I'll just keep failing. Rig, I said, taking him by the arm. The problem isn't that you're going to be unsuited to what you pick. The problem is what it's always been. That you're simply too scudding great at too many different things. He looked up at me. Do you really believe that, Spin? Sure do. I mean, yeah, you decided flying wasn't for you, but I think if you have a flaw, it's not that you fail too often. It's that you refuse to admit what everyone sees. The fact that you're incredible. He smiled, and seeing Rig's smile felt good. It reminded me of our days as kids, when an outcast and a kid who was bullied had made friends against the odds. You're going to drag me into something again, aren't you? He asked. Something ridiculous. I hesitated. Yeah, probably. All right, he said, standing up. I guess I'm in. Let's go see this surprise of yours. We continued on, climbing until I led him, finally, out a gap onto the surface. I pulled him over to the entrance of my improvised home, then made him hold on to me as I lowered us down inside. As, well, the chances that he'd slip and fall were pretty good. He was really amazing at a ton of things, but I'd seen him drop no fewer than 8 books on his toes while studying this past year. This had better not be something to do with rats, Spin, he said as we landed. I know you go crazy for them, but... I turned up the light on my light line, illuminating the ship. As if coordination with my reveal, Mbot turned on his dash and running lights. I'd cleared away much of the rubble, and with the lights, the ship didn't look half bad. Broken, yes, with a bent wing, but distinctly different from anything we had in the DDF. Rig gaped at it, his jaw dropping practically to the floor. Well, I said, what do you think? In response, he sat down on a nearby boulder, still staring at the ship, pulled off his right boot, then flipped it over his shoulder. Well, I noted, I said boots, plural, but I'll take it. Chapter 18. I didn't get much sleep that night. I spent a few hours helping Rig look over Mbot. He wanted to check each bit of damage. Eventually, though, I started to get bleary-eyed. Rig was still going strong, so I rolled out a mat and used bloodletter for a pillow. Every time I dozed off, I'd eventually wake to hear Rigmarole speaking to the ship. So, you're a machine, but you can think? All machines think, in that they execute responses to input. I am simply far more complex in my executable responses, and in the inputs I can recognize. More dozing. Can explain to us what's wrong? My memory banks are faulty, so I cannot offer more than cursory explanations, but perhaps those will be sufficient. I turned over on my side and dipped back down into sleep. Do not know where I originated, although a fragment of a memory implies I was created by human beings. I am not certain whether other species of sapient life exist. I believe I could answer that once. Around 6 in the morning, I rubbed my eyes and sat up. Rig lay below an open access panel, fiddling with something underneath the ship. I flopped down next to him, yawning. So? It's incredible, he said. Have you told Cobb about it? Not yet. Why delay? I mean, what if this thing can make the difference in fighting the Krell? Theoretically, I said, humans had this thing when they first fought the Krell. It didn't help then. I would note, Mbot said, that it is listening. And? I asked the ship, yawning. And it's generally considered bad form for humans to speak of one who is present as if they are not. I can't make you out, Mbot, Rig said, sitting up. You say you don't care about things like that, right? Obviously, I don't. I am a logical machine with a thin veneer of simulated emotions. Okay, Rig said. That makes sense. It's still rude, Mbot added. I looked to Rig, then gestured toward the cockpit. So, we have a magical talking starship with mysterious technology. Do you want to help me fix it? On our own? Rig asked. Why? So we can keep it. And fly it. You're in the DDF now, Spin. You don't need an outdated, broken down ship. Still here, Mbot noted. Just saying. I leaned forward. Rig, I'm not in the DDF. I'm in Cobb's class. So, you'll graduate. I don't care how few people he passes. You'll be one of them. And then? I asked, feeling cold. Expressing a fear I'd never voiced, but one that had haunted me since that first day. Cobb says he can let anyone he wants into his class. But if I pass, his authority ends there, Rig. Rig looked down at the wrench in his hand. I'm worried that the Admiral will deny me a ship, I said. Worried she'll find some petty reason to kick me out. Once Cobb can't protect me anymore. Worried I'll lose it, Rig. The sky. I looked toward the ship, glowing with lights along its side. This is old, yes, but it's also my freedom. He still looked skeptical. Think about how fun it would be, I said, poking around inside an ancient ship. Think of what mysteries we could discover. Maybe Mbot is still outdated technology, but maybe not. Won't it be fun to at least try to fix him on our own? If it doesn't work out, we can always turn him in later. Fine, Rig said. All right, stop giving me the hard sell. I'll try, Spin. I grinned at him. Rig looked at the ship. I worry this is beyond what we can do. Those boosters are ruined. We can't just weld something like that back together. I'm sure there will be other parts that will need to be replaced or fixed using tools we don't have. He thought for a moment. Though... What? I asked. One of my job offers, he said. It's from the elite engineering corps, the people who oversee repairing the starfighters, and the people who develop new designs. They've got the best labs, the best equipment. I nodded, eager. That sounds perfect. I was thinking of taking their offer anyway, he said. They told me I could come in the next 2 months, intern with them, learn my way around the ship. They were very impressed with my test scores and with my understanding of schematics and advanced engineering. Rig, that is awesome. I'm not promising anything, he said, but, well, maybe if I bring them the right questions, I can get them to show me how to fix certain pieces of Mbot. I'll have to do without making them suspicious. Regardless, we'll still need some spare parts, at least one full-size booster. I'll find us one, somehow. Just don't tell me where you get it, he noted. Maybe when this whole thing blows up in our faces, I can claim I didn't know about any possible thefts you might be up to. A small decal on the power matrix reads, Property of the White Family, Mbot said helpfully. It looks to have been ripped, quite crudely, from a small chassis. Blue finish, judging by the scratched-off paint on the corner. Rig sighed. Jorgen's car? Really? I plastered on a smile. The internship will take a chunk of each day, he said, rubbing his chin. But I should be able to dedicate the rest to this, if I need to. I'll have to tell my parents something. Tell them the internship is super demanding, I suggested, and that it will take the majority of your time. But, Mbot said, that's not true, is it? Nah, I said, but who cares? I care, the machine said. Why would you say something that isn't true? You can simulate emotions, I said, but not lies. I appear to be missing some code, Mbot said. Curious. Oh, what an interesting fungus. I frowned, then glanced to the side where Doomslug had crawled up on a rock. Scud, Rig said. There's some weird stuff up here close to the surface. He shivered. Can you do something about that thing? That thing is named Doomslug, I said, and she's my mascot. Don't hurt her while I'm away. I walked over, grabbing my pack. I need to get to class. You going to head below? Nah, Rig said. I suspected I might not be back for a while, so I left a note for my parents saying I was going to an employment meeting. They'll just assume I got up before them. I can head down later. I want to have a look at his wiring first. Great, I said. If you're still here when I get back from class each day, I'll join you in the repairs. If not, leave me notes saying what I can do to help. I hesitated. Remember, kind of a dunderhead at this, so he might want to give me the easy but annoying tasks. Rig smiled once more, settling down on a rock, looking at Mbot. There was a light in his eyes, what I remembered from back when we started planning to become pilots. In that moment, seeing Rig like that again, I had my first real impression that this might work. Somehow this plan might just work. Wait, Mbot said. You're leaving me with him. I'll be back tonight, I promised. I see. Could you come into the cockpit so we can speak in private? I looked at the ship, frowning. I don't want to explain in public why I like you better than the engineer, Mbot added. If he heard me go on at length regarding his irresolvable flaws, he might feel belittled or despondent. Well, that part is going to be lovely, Riggs said, rolling his eyes. Maybe we can find a way to shut off the personality. I pulled myself up into the cockpit. The canopy moved down and sealed with a whoosh. It's all right, I said to Mbot. Rig is good people. He'll take care of you. I am, of course, simply emulating the way humans play irrational favorites over one another. But could you not go? I'm sorry. I've got to go learn to fight the Krell. I frowned at the tone in the robot's voice. What's wrong? I told you, Rig is a good... I am willing to accept that he is until evidence proves otherwise. This is a problem. I appear to have lost my master. I can be your new master. I cannot change masters without proper authentication codes, he said, which I just realized I do not remember. The problem, however, is larger than this mere fact. I do not remember my mission. I do not know where I came from. I do not know my purpose. If I were human, I would be scared. How did I respond to that? A frightened starship? Don't worry, I said. We'll give you a new purpose. Destroying the Krell. You're a fighter, Mbot. I'm sure that name stands for something exciting. Murderbot, Mayhembot, Massacrebot. That's it, I'm sure. You're a frightening, all-powerful death ship designed to fry the Krell and save humanity. I do not feel very frightening, he said. I do not feel like a death ship. We'll deal with that, I promised. Trust me. And I can trust that these words are not a falsehood, like the one to tell the engineer's parents. Well, that came back to bite me faster than I'd expected. I must ask you, Mbot said more softly, not to tell any others about me. I assumed you'd understand this earlier when I explained my orders. I am supposed to lie low, which is a colloquialism for remaining inconspicuous. You should not have told the engineer. And how would we repair you otherwise? I do not know. Spencer, I am an artificial intelligence, a computer. I must obey my orders. Please, you can't turn me over to your DDF. You must not even speak to me of me to anyone else. Well, that was going to present a problem. I wanted to get this thing flying, and once I did, that would mean flying it to help in the fight against the Krell. And if we couldn't fix it, well, I'd need to turn it over. Regardless of what I thought of Ironsides, I couldn't just sit on this ship forever. Not if it could mean the difference between the survival and extinction of humanity. I'd opened my mouth to argue with Mbot further when a set of lights started flashing on the dashboard. Multiple atmospheric incursions have been detected by my short-range sensors, Mbot said. Debris has begun falling toward the planet, with 43 ships following. 43? I said, glancing at his sensor readout. Short range for him was apparently still pretty long by our standards. Wow, you can spot them even in a debris fall? Easily. Proof already that the DDF could use this technology. Our scanners weren't as accurate as that. That knowledge immediately made me uncomfortable. Still, 43 Krell. The maximum they'd ever fielded was 100 ships, so this was an impressive force. I hit the button to open the canopy, then hauled myself out and hopped onto a rock. Krell, I said to Rig, a big flight. Are we in danger here? No, they're coming from the other direction. But the cadets have been training long enough now that Ironsides has started sending them up for real, as support units during combat. Firestorm flight went 2 days ago. So, I'd better get going, just in case. Chapter 19. I started running. A sense of anxiety built in me as I heard the distant sound of debris hitting. I somehow knew that Ironsides would send my flight up for this attack. She liked testing cadets in real combat experience, and we were far enough in our training that Cobb had warned we'd soon be sent into some real battles. It was our turn. The time had come. So I forced myself into a jog, then a dash across the dusty ground. Sweat pouring down the side of my face, I felt a horrible inevitability as I approached the base, where warning klaxons blared. Not fear, really, but dread. What if I was too late? What if the others went into battle without me? I entered the base, then rounded the outside wall toward our launch pad. A single ship sat there, alone. I'd been right. I reached my ship in a sweaty mess, pushing my own ladder into place as several members of the ground crew noticed me and started yelling. One got there in time to stabilize my ladder. "Where have you been, cadet?" she shouted at me. "The rest of your flight went up 20 minutes ago." I shook my head, sliding into the cockpit, too exhausted to speak. "No pressure suit?" the ground crewer said. "No time." "All right. Don't make any sharp ascents then. You have clearance to go. Call into your flight leader, then move." I nodded, then pulled on my helmet. This one, like the one in the training room, had the strange lumps inside, to measure whatever it was they wanted to measure about me. I flipped on the flight radio band as the canopy lowered. "Don't let your nerves get the best of you," Jerkface was saying over the radio. "Stay focused, watch your wingmate. You heard Cobb. We don't have to fire. Just focus on keeping yourself from being turned to slag." "What?" I said. "What's going on?" "Spin," Jerkface asked. "Where have you been?" "In my cave. Where else would I be?" I engaged my acclivity ring and launched my ship upward. G-forces hit me, and my stomach felt like it was trying to escape through my toes. I slowed the ascent. "Repeat that part to me. You're going into battle? You're not staying at the edge of combat?" "The Admiral finally wants to let us fight," Bim said, eager. "Contain yourself, Bim," Jerkface said. "Spin. We're at 11.3-302.7-21000. Get here as fast as you can. Ironsides has ordered us into a small firefight alongside a flight of full pilots. We're there to confuse the enemy and hopefully split their attention." In other words, we're being sent in as targets, I thought, wiping my hand on my jumpsuit. My heartbeat thrumming, sweat making my hair stick to my face. Or they are, without me. Not for long. I slammed the throttle forward, going into overburn. The grav caps protected me for 3 seconds, and then I slammed back in my seat. I could take G-forces like these, though, pushing me straight backward. It wasn't pleasant, but I didn't risk blacking out. I just had to get to speed, then carefully climb using the acclivity ring. I quickly reached Mag 10, which was the upper speed threshold for a Poco, at least safely. Even this was stretching the limits. The atmospheric scoops, which pushed air away around the ship in a bubble, preventing me from ripping off my wings during tight maneuvers, were overwhelmed, and my ship rattled from the motion. The friction of air resistance made my normally invisible shield start to glow. I climbed upward as well, but carefully, slower, as the G-forces in that direction threatened to knock me out. Going up forced my blood down into my feet. I did the stomach-clenching exercises we'd been taught in centrifuge training, but still, darkness started to creep around the outside of my vision. I held on, pressed down at 6 times my normal weight. Though the flight would only take a short while, I had to listen to my friends in battle all the way. "Careful, Hurl, not too eager." "One's on me! I've got one on me!" "Dodge, FM!" Dodging, Scud! Who was that?" "Nightstorm 6. That's my brother, guys. Call sign Vent. FM, you owe me some fries for something." "To your right. Arturo, look up." Looking. Stars, what a mess. Finally, my dash beeped, indicating I was approaching my desired coordinates. I let off in the altitude lever, then performed a rapid deceleration. In a Poco with atmospheric scoops, that meant spinning my ship in the air, the grav caps kicking in, then firing my booster backward to slow me down. I came out of it after slowing to Mag 1, standard dogfighting speed. I spun my Poco around, facing toward the battlefield, where distant lights flashed in the dark morning sky. Debris fell as red streaks. "I'm here," I said to the others. "Go in and help Morningtide," Jorgen shouted at me. "Can you spot her?" "Looking," I said, frantic, scanning my proximity sensor screen. "There." I hit overburn, accelerating her direction. "Guys," I said, glancing at the scanner. "Morningtide has picked up the tail." "I see it," Jerkface said. "Morningtide, you read? Trying dodge." My ship screamed toward the battlefield. I could now see the individual fighters, a swirling mess mixed with destructor bolts and the occasional light lance. Morningtide's Poco pulled upward into a loop, trailed by 3 Krell ships. Almost there. The Krell destructors flared. Hit again, and then A burst of light, a spray of sparks, and Morningtide died in a massive explosion. She didn't have a chance to eject. Kimmelin screamed, a high-pitched, panicked, pain sound. "No!" Jerkface said. "No! No! No!" I arrived, flying at Mag 3, too fast for normal dogfighting maneuvers, but still managed to spear one of the Krell ships with my light lance. But it was too late. The fiery sparks that had been Morningtide went out as they fell. I spun and reversed my thrust, letting go of the light lance and flinging the Krell ship to the side. Another of our fighters came in after it, shooting and managing to blast it down. I fell in beside Jerkface, silently smothering my own screams. He'd lost his wingmate. Where was Arturo? I couldn't make out anything tactical in the fray. My flight zipped in all directions, drawing fire, yes, but also adding to the confusion. A few larger class of DDF fighters wound through it all, mixing with some dozen Krell ships, each trailing wires in that same unfinished way. I was crying, but I set my jaw and kept on Jorgen's wing. He expertly speared a Krell ship with his light lance and it tried to break away, so I speared it as well. "That debris, Jorgen," I said. "Coming down at your 2, falling slowly." "Right." We both hit our throttles, as Cobb had taught us, and pulled the enemy ship toward the debris. At the last minute, we cut our lines and split to the sides, slamming the Krell ship into the debris in a fiery explosion. "What are you doing?" Cobb said over the line. "You are ordered into defensive postures." "Cobb," I said. "Morningtide." "Keep your head, girl," he shouted. "Grieve when the debris rests. Right now, obey orders. Defensive postures." I gritted my teeth, but didn't argue, following Jorgen as he wound through the smoke trails left by falling chunks of debris. That looked to be Arturo and Ned to my right, leapfrogging each other with quick accelerations and decelerations to keep the enemy from focusing on either one of them. That kind of technique could confuse the Krell, much like overwhelming them with targets. Morningtide. "Quirk," Jorgen said. "What are you doing?" I realized I could still hear Kimmelin's soft whine of pain over the radio. I searched the scanner, then spotted a single Poco, without a wingmate, hovering near the perimeter of the fight. "Quirk, move," Jorgen said. "You're a clear target. Get in here." Kimmelin said. "I was trying to line up a shot. I was going to save her." "Join the fight," Jorgen shouted. "Cadet, hit your throttle and get in here." "I'll cover her," I said, moving to break off as we zoomed past 2 Krell coming the other way. So many sparks and destructor shots lit the sky. I almost felt I was down in Igneous, swallowed up by a forge. "No," Jorgen said to me. "You see Bim? At your 8? Cover him. I'll deal with Kimmelin." "Understood." I zipped down and to my left, the grav caps covering the G-forces of the sharp turn. As I moved, however, a spot on my dash lit up, a bright violet warning light near my proximity sensors. I'd picked up a tail. Though we barely touched on dogfighting, Cobb's training snapped into my mind. "Trust the scanner. Don't waste time trying to get a visual. Keep your focus on flying." "Spin," FM said. "You've got a tail." I was already pulling my ship into an evasive loop, counting on the grav caps to handle the G-force. Something clicked immediately in my head. The training, the way my face grew cold, the way my mind snapped into focus despite the fatigue, the stress and the grief. It was almost like it didn't matter if a Krell was following me. In that moment, it was just me and the ship, extensions of one another. I pulled out of my loop into a straight dive, then cut to the side and launched a perfect light lance hook into a slowly falling chunk of debris. I didn't go quite fast enough, and when my grav caps cut, the G-forces rammed me down on my seat. I saw black at the corners of my vision, but held on. I spun around sharply and buzzed another chunk of debris, trailing its smoke in my wake, then zoomed right between 2 Krell ships coming up the other direction. My tail lost me in the turn, and I caught a flashing explosion behind me as one of the full pilots picked it off while it was trying to catch up to me. "Good maneuver, Spin," Cobb said softly in my ear. "Excellent maneuver, actually, but don't get too flashy. Remember the simulation. Flashy moves can still get you killed." I nodded, though he couldn't see. "Bim is at your 10 now, up about 150. Get on him. That boy is too eager." As if on cue, Bim's voice entered the flight line. "Guys, do you see that? Up in front of me?" There was a larger firefight happening in the distance. We'd been ordered to join the smaller of the 2 skirmishes, and I could make out the falling sparks and miss destructor shots of that larger battle, but I didn't think that was what Bim was indicating. As I fell in at his side, I spotted it. A Krell ship, but a different model from the curved fighters. This one was bulbous, like a bulging fruit with wings at the top. Or, no, that was a ship flying with something huge attached to the bottom. A bomber, I realized, remembering my studies. One carrying a lifebuster. Lifebuster, Jorgen said. Cobb, we've confirmed sighting of a lifebuster bomb. The other flight radio bands are talking about it too, Cobb said. Steady, cadet. The Admiral is already dealing with that bomber. I can hit it, Cobb, Bim said. I can bring it down. I expected Cobb to dismiss that idea immediately, but he didn't. Let me call for orders and tell them you have a visual. Bim took that as confirmation. You with me, Spin? Every step, I said. Let's go. Wait, cadet, Cobb said. There's something odd about these descriptions. Can you confirm? That bomb sounds larger than usual. Bim wasn't listening. I watched out my cockpit window as he dove toward the solitary bomber, which had, following usual Krell protocol, slipped down to low altitude to try flying in underneath the AA guns. Something's wrong. A group of shadows broke off the side of the bomb. Smaller Krell ships, almost invisible in the darkness. 4 of them. They lit up the air with red destructor blasts. One grazed my canopy, causing my shield to crackle with light. My nerves jolted, and I spun my ship, by instinct, to the side. Cobb, I said, 4 escort ships just broke off the bomber. The ships buzzed us. I dodged, barely, my hands sweaty on my controls. They're faster than regular Krell. This is something new, Cobb said. Fall back, you two. I can hit it, Cobb, Bim said. The light of his destructor glowed at the front of the ship as he powered up a long-range shot. The 4 Guardians ships swarmed toward us, firing again. Bim! I screamed. I was pretty sure I saw him look toward me, light reflecting on his helmet visor, as the blast hit his ship, overwhelming his shield with concentrated fire. Bim's ship exploded into several large chunks, one of which slammed into my ship. I was flung to the side as my Poco went into a spin. Quirk screamed my name as the world rocked. The lights on my dash went insane. The shield down warning blaring. G-forces hit as the grav caps were overwhelmed. Nausea flooded me, and everything became a blur. But my training still kicked in. Somehow, pulling hard on the control sphere, I managed to hit the dive controls, which pivoted my acclivity ring on its front hinge like a hatch opening. That angled it toward the nose of my ship, and the maneuver pulled me out of the fall. The world righted itself, and I hung there in a hover, my nose pointing straight at the ground. Lights flashed on my dash. Below, I watched as Bim's remains hit the surface in a ripple of soft explosions. He'd never even picked a call sign. The enemy is disengaging, Ned said. Looks like they've had enough. I listened, numb to other reports. A strike team of full pilots went after the bomber, and rather than risk losing the weapon, the Krell pulled into a full retreat. The bomber escaped, as did enough ships to keep the Admiral from giving chase. I just hung there, the blue glow of the acclivity ring a cold, lifeless light in front of me. Spin, Jorgen said. Report in. Are you all right? No, I whispered, but finally reset my acclivity ring, rotating my ship to the standard axis. I channeled power to the shield igniter, waited until the light powered up, then grabbed the handle and slammed it backward. Another shield cracked to life around my Poco, then turned invisible. I climbed up into a line with the others. Vocal confirmation of status, Jorgen ordered. We responded, and everyone else was still there. But when we flew back to base, our formation had 2 stark holes in it. Bim and Morningtide were gone. Skyward flight had been reduced from 9 to 7.